This is Module 3 of IDIS online training for CDBG grantees. In Module 3, we will learn how to provide activity level data for a housing activity. Examples of a housing activity include rehab, down payment assistance, and site acquisition. First, we'll review a set of slides that discuss some key points of data entry for a housing activity. Next, we'll use a case study to demonstrate the data entry process. Both the slides and the case study are available for download from the course website. If you have not already done so, you may want to download and print the course materials first and then follow along with the module. Let's get started. On this first slide, we see a list of all the housing activities eligible under CDBG, and to the left of each eligible use, you'll see the matrix code. Matrix codes are how we report to HUD and IDIS that the activity we are funding is eligible. If you don't know which matrix code to use, look in Appendix A of your manual. Appendix A will list all of the matrix codes and their corresponding definitions. You may also want to talk with your CPD HUD representative and discuss the issue with them. There are some cases where grantees will want to set up a separate IDIS activity to track the program delivery cost of their housing rehab program. There are 3 different ways to handle this in IDIS, depending on how the program is funded. If the housing rehab program is funded out of the CDBG program, this means there will be other activities in IDIS other than the program delivery activity that are tracking the accomplishments. If this is the case, the grantee doesn't want to report accomplishments under the program delivery activity. If they did, they would be double counting the beneficiaries. Instead, the grantee will answer yes when the system asks if the accomplishments will be reported under other activities. We'll see this question when we go through the case study. If the housing rehab program is funded from non-CDBG funds and CDBG is only being used for the program delivery, this means there are no other activities in IDIS where the grantee could report the beneficiaries. In this case, the grantee must report the accomplishments under the program delivery activity in order to get credit for the work. If the housing rehab program is funded out of the home program, the grantee can use 14J as the matrix code for housing services. These units would be reported under home-funded activities in IDIS. However, in order to get credit for the CDBG program, the grantee must report the accomplishments under the program delivery activity as well. While it may look like double counting from the grantee point of view, HUD views home and CDBG separately in terms of performance measurement. If you don't report accomplishments under the CDBG-funded program delivery activity, CDBG would not get any credit. Housing services can be used to pay for the delivery costs of most home-funded projects, not just rehab admin. For more information, you'll want to refer to the CDBG statute, specifically Section 5305A20. This is one of the few instances where it's better to refer to the statute instead of the regulations. Again, use Appendix A in your course manual when you have questions about which matrix code to use. One of the most common mistakes grantees make is using the wrong matrix code for housing counseling. For activities that only provide counseling, you'll want to use 05U, which is a public service matrix code. When using 05U, you'll report the number of persons receiving counseling. For activities that provide any sort of direct financial assistance, that's when you'll use 13 or 05R, and you'll report the number of households receiving financial assistance. If you have an activity that provides both financial assistance and housing counseling, you can report both uses as 13 or 05R, but when it comes to reporting, you'll only report the number of households receiving financial assistance. There will be a separate performance measurement screen where you can report the number of households that receive housing counseling. The most common national objective for a housing activity is low-mod housing. When showing that you've met the national objective, you'll be counting households, not residents or families. Households are all the occupants of the unit, related or unrelated. There's different thresholds for this national objective depending on the type of property you're assisting. When you're assisting a single family property, the unit must be occupied by a low and moderate income family. If you're assisting 2 units in a duplex, one of the 2 units must be occupied by a low-mod household. and anytime you're assisting a multifamily property with 3 or more units, at least 51% of the units must be occupied by low-mod households. Grantees will often ask about rehabs where the work is limited to a specific unit within a multifamily property, a condominium for example. If the scope is limited to the one unit, you can treat this as a single family. If the scope includes work on common areas or items that affect multiple units, such as a roof or heating system, you'll need to include all the affected units to determine the national objective. Some housing activities can use the slum blight area basis or spot basis as the national objective. We're going to focus on low-mod housing in this module. If you want more information on the slum blight area or slum blight spot basis, go ahead and look at Chapter 13 in your manual. This slide lists some key points to keep in mind when entering data for housing activities in IDIS. First, HUD encourages you to set up a separate IDIS activity for each property assisted. By doing so, HUD will be able to map out where CDBG funds are being spent in the community. At this time, this is not a requirement for single-family housing programs. Grantees could set up one activity for their single-family housing rehab program and report all units they assist under that one activity. In the address location field for the activity, the grantee would use community-wide or the name of a specific target area. In a future upgrade, grantees will be able to report multiple addresses for one activity, but that's not available at this time. When entering multifamily properties, grantees should add a separate IDIS activity for each property. Can you think why multifamily is handled differently than single family? For multifamily properties, HUD needs to see that each property meets the 51% threshold. If all multifamily properties are reported under the same activity, HUD would not be able to make this determination. Regardless of how many activities you are using, you never want to use the address of the program administrator in the address location field. If you're using a separate IDIS activity for each address, use the property's address. If you are lumping all the properties under a single IDIS activity, use something like community-wide. Most of the information you enter at the activity level for CDBG will appear in the year-end reports that are published as part of your CAPER. Given this, HUD recommends not to use the family name within the IDIS activity name. Instead, use the address of or an internal tracking number, and this will ensure some level of privacy for that assisted household. Finally, HUD strongly encourages grantees to update accomplishment and beneficiary data throughout the program year. Do not wait until the project is complete to report accomplishments. At a minimum, grantees are required to update the accomplishment data at the end of the program year. This slide previews all of the screens we will see when we add a new housing activity and when we update and complete a housing activity. To add a housing activity that uses low-mod housing, or LMH, as the national objective, we need to complete 3 screens of data entry. If you want to follow along in your manual, refer to Chapter 3, CDBG Activity Setup. To update or complete a low-mod housing activity, we will need to complete 2 screens of data entry under CDBG Accomplishment Detail. The information you need to provide on page 2 will vary based on the type of housing activity you are completing. Chapter 11 of the course manual does a good job of explaining the required data for each type of housing activity. For the data entry portion of this module, we will be using Case Study 2. Take a moment to read through Case Study 2 and respond to the discussion questions. When you're done, log into the UAT version of IDIS and follow along. The best way to learn IDIS is to get hands-on practice.